Welcome back, everyone. Next, we have SeaStar Medical Holding Corporation. It trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol ICU and is a commercial stage medical technology company that's redefining how extracorporeal therapies may reduce the consequences of excessive inflammation on vital organs. Please welcome its president, CEO, and director, Eric Schlorff. Nice to see you, Eric. Welcome back to the conference.
Well, thanks for having me back. I'm really excited to be here today.
I know you're going to go through a quick overview and then call me back and we'll go through some questions.
Sounds good. Well, for the audience that haven't been introduced to SeaStar Medical, I'll just give you a kind of a brief overview of the company. This is a company that is, as we've said, redefining how extracorporeal therapies work. I'll explain what extracorporeal means, but this is really about innovative solutions for the consequences of a dysregulated immune response. Obviously, as a publicly traded company, we may be making forward-looking statements. Please refer to this in the disclosure. So what is SeaStar Medical and who are we? What are we trying to accomplish? So this is a platform technology or therapy that is really trying to address the life-threatening consequences of a dysregulated immune response. What does that mean? That really means is that this is due to overproduction of inflammatory cells. So think of cytokine storm. And that could cause vital organs to be damaged, as well as multi-organ failure and even death. You know, what we've been able to show both on the benchtop as well as clinically in patients' clinical studies is that we can use this selective cytophoretic device, or what we call the SCD, to actually deliver a cell-directed extracorporeal therapy. Extracorporeal means outside the body that can bring activated cells back to a reparative state and homeostasis. So what you see over here is what looks like a device, what may feel like a device, but works nothing like a device. It actually works like autologous cell therapy. So it is really essentially reprogramming the immune cells that are the bad actors and turning the volume of those down and putting them into a reparative state. We are branding the product family Quell Immune. As it says, we're quelling that immune system. And so we did receive first approval, FDA approval, back in February for an HDE approval, which is a humanitarian device use in children. But as we start in the kidneys, which you'll see why, we are starting in the kidneys, the liver, the lungs, the heart, as well as the brain, all have applicability because this can really be used not only in the acute settings like an ICU or intensive care unit, but also on a critical chronic basis. So, you know, what we'll kind of dive a little bit through here is that it does provide this proprietary technology, provide a potentially life-saving unmet clinical need. It is under an HDE, so we have the pediatric is now approved for commercial use. We're actively enrolling sites in a clinical study for adults, and we'll explain the kind of the different market size potential there. And we continue to generate clinical data that will demonstrate potential significant economic value. That's obviously important because that's what we're selling to hospitals, selling to patients, selling to the systems. And this has applicability across not only the acute side, as I've said, but also on a chronic high value indications. And we have a world-class team that we continue to build out methodically to bring in the right pieces to really be able to deliver this therapy both clinically as well as commercially. So pediatric SCD. So what is this approval that we received? Well, we received an approval order back in February of 2024. This was for pediatric patients that are greater than 10 kilograms or 22 pounds that have acute kidney injury and sepsis or a septic condition in the ICU with CKRT, which is continuous kidney replacement therapy. This is obviously important because these are patients that are very critically ill as they are septic or have sepsis, and we know that sepsis has a high cost as well as mortality burden on the hospital systems itself. We feel like this really validates the technology approach because having an FDA approval in a pediatric indication as the lead is unusual. And obviously, you know, the FDA and the regulatory bodies look at kids as a more sensitive patient population, which also really strengthens kind of the validation of that technology. This is for patients, really a patient population that's under 8,000 patients per year, which is why we fall under this humanitarian device exemption. And this is the first product in the QuellImmune product family that we're so excited about. So what is it that we actually do? So let's talk maybe about at the beginning. So there's various ways that the inflammatory system, or the inflammation starts. It could actually be through bacteria, which we know as sepsis. It could be viral, which examples would be like COVID or even the bird flu. We've got trauma, surgery. All of these things can actually start a cytokine storm. And it's that cytokine storm or hyperinflammation that is really what's driving the damage to the end organs. And that's where we come in. So if you look at this, this is a schematic of, again, these are the insults. We call them insults. So bacteria, viruses, surgery or trauma. In a normal dysregulated function, you see these monocytes and neutrophils are out of control, and they're creating this large cytokine storm, or cytokines that are being kind of expelled from the neutrophils and monocytes. This is important because this is an uncontrolled process. What happens with the selective cytophoretic device is we are actually to selectively take out and deactivate, per se, the neutrophils and monocytes. And we do that in this extracorporeal therapy, in this extracorporeal circuit. That's important because what we've been able to show is that we can actually take that immune system from a pro-inflammatory state where it's causing a lot of damage to a reparative state. And this is why we are starting in the kidneys, is because it is a simple bolt-on right now to current solutions and systems that are provided for these patients in the intensive care unit today. So a patient requiring continuous kidney replacement therapy is on a hemofilter continuously, where we then can, with the hospital staff, attach the SCD therapy to that, which takes about 15 minutes or so for the hospital staff. And then in a controlled microenvironment, we're actually creating an autologous cell therapy and returning those now reparative cells to go back and do the good fight to the body. This is important because this is, again, a very simple add-on, and you'll understand from a patient standpoint, it's a very large market opportunity as well. So while we're starting in children, which is about 4,000, it's really the adult population, which is 50 times more, or about 210,000 patients in the United States. This is every year. So every year, about 210,000 patients experience acute kidney injury requiring some sort of kidney replacement therapy in the intensive care unit, which takes this into a multi-billion-dollar market potential on an annual basis. So we are in the process of conducting a clinical study as we speak. This is a 200-person study with, it's a randomized controlled study, with the control being standard of care, which is what's already done today in the ICU, and then the SCD on the other side. It's a shorter study, so we only go out 90 days for the primary endpoint. This is important because we're not waiting years for the data to come in to actually have the final readout. And then on top of it, we have some secondary endpoints around 1-year outputs, which will really then start to get more into some of the healthcare economics, which will be useful for the commercial launch and adoption in the hospital systems. But while we're running clinical studies, we're doing a whole lot of other preparation around the science itself. And you'll see this in a lot of the manuscripts that we have put out. We have done many types of breakthrough device designations. We have Congress presence. We have research that's going on at the University of Michigan, as well as a really world-class scientific advisory board. So, when we look at the pipeline, while we start with kidneys, that's only the start. We actually have 3 breakthrough device designations from the FDA, one in adult AKI with patients on CKRT, which is what the study was I was explaining earlier. We also have a cardiorenal, which is a bridge to LVAD. So this is heart failure, again, very large market potentials, as well as hepatorenal. So those are the 3 that have breakthrough device designations to date. And you can see that they are continuing to move through the pipeline. It is important to note that in the adult population, we use the same selective cytophoretic device. So we're not having to change out and redesign new devices each and every application that we have. We can actually use the same device in the sense of from a clinical basis. So safety profile, all those types of things can really be leveraged into multiple studies then going forward. Again, we are building out our team. You can see we in January had hired David Green as the chief CFO, and then Kevin Chung has been with us since about July of 2022. He's our chief medical officer and is a self-proclaimed extracorporeal enthusiast as well. And so, when we think about value creation milestones, which is obviously on every one of our shareholders' minds, we did have the FDA approval for children back in February 2024. We have launched the product, but have yet to get the first sale. We will actually talk about that, but that was in Q1. And then really on the adult side, the biggest clinical milestone right now is the second half of this year, where we will be able to see the interim data, which is at 100 patients. And then you can see from there where we see kind of the rollout from a commercial standpoint. And so, just kind of leave this up, and I'll kind of leave it up to now the fireside chat to answer some of the questions that I know that our investors are eager to ask and for me to answer.
Great job, Eric. We do have some questions. Let's talk a little bit about Quell Immune. When will it become commercially available, and why might it be taking so long?
Yeah, we get this question a lot. So, as we previously stated, we anticipate the first commercial sale by the end of Q2 2024, which is the end of this month. And we believe we're on track to be able to meet that timeline. We have to remember that, Quell Immune was approved under a humanitarian device exemption, which includes certain FDA requirements before we can even begin commercialization. We're working through two processes in parallel, one with the FDA and the other gaining hospital approvals. Our team has been diligently working through both of these processes. These processes include things like information packages to the institutional review boards, or IRBs, obtaining simple things like barcodes through the FDA, setting up a registry that was required, among other activities. And I think it's important for the investors to know that, gaining kind of approvals from hospital IRBs and value assessment committees and other hospital committees can take a lot of time, and 90 days is considered a quick turnaround for this process. But, we're really encouraged by many hospitals expressing interest. That said, we're taking a methodical approach with a focus on 5 hospitals initially. In the actual FDA approval order, the FDA stipulated that the first patient must be treated by mid to late August of 2024. This is really important because this timing is very consistent with other recent HDE holders' experiences. And so while I know our investors are impatient, as you can imagine that we are as a company, these things and processes have to do and go through the right steps through the whole process before you can have that first sale. And we're methodical and want to get the foundation set before we go fast. We only get one chance to launch the product right, and our team is laser focused on getting it right the first time. Just to reiterate, we do expect the first commercial Quell Immune sales this month.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Why did you decide now to implement the reverse stock split?
Yeah, so NASDAQ. People ask, well, can't you get another extension for NASDAQ? Shouldn't they give you another 180 days? No, they won't. We had already extinguished all the additional extensions. We needed to implement the reverse stock split to allow us to maintain a $1 price for 20 days within our grace period to regain compliance with NASDAQ listing standards. If we would have waited any longer to implement, we would have lost our NASDAQ listing. And maintaining that listing is truly in the best interest of all of our shareholders because it makes the stock more appealing to investors, allows us easier access to the capital markets, and reestablishing a NASDAQ list is expensive. And so, while I know that, people are like, why are you doing it at this point? That is why we did it. And that's why we have to do it to maintain that listing.
Thank you for explaining that. Talk about your capital needs. What are they, and how are you going to raise additional funds?
Yeah. So, right now we're burning about $1.25 million per month. We've taken steps to deleverage the balance sheet to improve our capital structure and to support the kind of the future capital needs. So that's the one key takeaway I want to make sure investors understand. Another head scratcher, I got to be honest, is earlier this week, we announced that in an 8K filing with the SEC that we reported that a major investor converted they had convertible debt, and they actually had converted at $13.75 per share. And apparently that got lost on the market, as I'm not sure what our stock is trading today. But we had a significant investor that has had a lot of faith behind us, and they were willing to transact that at $13.75. So obviously there's a little bit of a disconnect in the market. And then we've got a shelf offering. So, back in December of 2023, we put that in place. That's really important for investors to understand that that's a way for the company to generate capital, but do it through a lower transaction fees, which is beneficial to shareholders.
And so what are you going to do to speed up the process of activating additional sites in the adult AKI trial?
Yeah, so we now have 10 clinical sites activated and have enrolled 33 patients. As a reminder, the market opportunity for this adult AKI is about 50 times larger than pediatric. Our team is working very closely with all the principal investigators and hospitals to activate more sites. One of the actions we are taking is to activate more sites through finalizing a CMS reimbursement application for Medicare and Medicaid patients. So CMS actually would cover some portion of the costs associated with conducting the study. And some of those clinical sites that we are waiting for that CMS approval letter, which we anticipate in the next 30 days. We do look forward to sharing more information in the future, including what our cost savings with CMS reimbursement will be for the Medicare Medicaid patients and the impact of our future cash needs. Again, our team is laser focused on getting sites activated as well as patients enrolled. We understand this is a critical milestone, and we are focused on getting this study enrolled the proper way and to have the outcomes that we anticipate.
And what might your expectations for QuellImmune sales be this year or next year?
Yeah, so we have yet to introduce any kind of sales guidance for 2024, but I would anticipate that we will provide guidance in Q4 of this year for 2025 for fiscal year 2025.
Perfect.
With any of these new products that are coming out, it's a little hard to kind of really give any kind of quality guidance because timing, adoption, et cetera. But once we have kind of a more solid footing, that investors will have a little bit more kind of foundation to have in their hands, that's when we feel it's most appropriate.
And do you have any upcoming catalysts that might show the greatest progress you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, look, we've got obviously continuing enrollment. Site activations are big on the adult side, adult clinical study. We have this interim look at the data. So at 100 patients, we'll have a 90-day follow-up. That interim review will be conducted by our data safety monitoring board. While we have tons of confidence in achieving the endpoints at the completion of the fully enrolled trial, given our clinical results to date, critical care clinical studies are historically challenging due to heterogeneous patient populations. It's been one of those days. So, obviously, these are challenging studies, but we're confident. And, we also anticipate expecting that initial sales and first patient treated with QuellImmune here in the next couple of weeks. And, we'll continue to plan out additional progress and other indications as they unfold.
So where are you in advancing SCD technology and other indications such as cardiorenal and hepatorenal? My turn to mispronounce medical terms.
It's okay.
Where are you at that?
Yeah, so we have this FDA approval, breakthrough device designation for both the indications as well as an adult AKI. This designation of breakthrough device designation is awarded to a therapy to treat a serious or life-threatening condition with preliminary clinical evidence indicating it may demonstrate substantial improvement over available therapies on clinical significant endpoints. We announced in late April this year that Dr. David Humes, the inventor of the SCD and a member of our scientific advisory board, received a $3.6 million grant from the NIH to conduct a clinical trial in patients with severe cardiorenal syndrome. So we, as SeaStar, will be acting as their contract research organization for this study, and we anticipate that we'll receive about a quarter of those funds over the next 3 years. We're also working closely with the University of Michigan and evaluating the timing and resources needed to accelerate enrollment in the hepatorenal syndrome clinical study that is ongoing at the University of Michigan.
Wonderful. And what other indications involve hyperinflammation and could be promising for the SCD technology?
Yeah, look, the fact that the SCD could have applicability in many indications that involve hyperinflammation is exciting. Among these includes, and not limited to, is sepsis, which obviously has a long been a major global unmet medical need. But we also have heart failure from the studies that we've talked about just briefly before, liver failure, which is the hepatorenal. We have acute respiratory distress syndrome, so think of lungs. But more importantly, I want to make sure our investors understand that viruses and bacteria present another interesting angle for our shareholders that you guys should all be aware of. So patients who are impacted by viruses and bacteria that cause dysregulation of the immune system or hyperinflammation have had a success of being treated with the SCD. And we're bringing this up because we've recently heard of a patient with a new bird flu and new COVID strains that could have potential benefit from therapeutic treatment with the SCD. Here's an interesting, striking observation about the bird flu is that it generates a massive release of inflammatory cytokines, causing immune cells to proliferate and provoking inflammation. Sound familiar? That's essentially what the SCD is built to address. And some of these cytokines were present at amounts hundreds of thousands times higher in bird flu patients than patients with the ordinary flu. And so I bring this up because while we're not always associated with many of the kind of the viruses and bacteria that pop up, this is a therapy that has potential application in each one of those in the intensive care unit because of the insult agnostic nature of it. And remember, there are many types of bacteria, some of them on the countermeasures list, that cause damage by overstimulating the immune system. So, when a product has shown promise to be insult agnostic, the indication set is widens. So the company has an opportunity to focus on evaluating market size, development time and cost, and clinical trial design before deciding the next indication to pursue. We have that opportunity all the while using the same SCD. There are many more indications where the SCD could have applicability. We believe this makes the SeaStar Medical a truly unique investment opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for joining us on the conference and giving this important update. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, everyone, stay with us. We'll be right back.